All right, folks, we are live here in Israel with the Israel War Update. Israel is at war. It's not maybe an official war yet, but it is certainly a massive operation with thousands of rockets being lobbed from Gaza into Israel, with the deployment of the Iron Dome here in Israel, shooting down over 90% of those, and yet some getting through and killing Israelis. And also, at the same time, we have the issue of the Israeli Arabs forming jihadist gangs, that these gangs are in the streets of Israel, and they are destroying shops, burning synagogues and lootings, and that is a humongous issue that we're facing here right now in the land of Israel. This is a few hours before the Shavuot holiday, and I wanted to get on the screen right now and just give you an update to see what's going on. And we're going to have with us soon, we're going to have Josh Hasten. In fact, let me invite him, make sure that he knows to join us. He's just coming right now from the Gaza border. So he's driving, and he's going to stop and pull over and give us a little bit of an update of what's going on there. And I invite you to join me from wherever you are. Let me know. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your perspectives on what's going on right now. And there's really a lot of issues and questions. This is not a simple battle that Israel finds itself in. So we will try to discuss those issues together. Just sending Josh the invite to today's program. He'll be on with us in just a few minutes. And I want to hear from you. Let me know what you're thinking, and let me know how you're seeing this perspective. And let me know if you see me well. Says Lou, he says not in sync yet. We're having some kind of issues. Is that right? Lou, let me know if we're getting into sync. And in the meantime, Linda says shalom and prayers from New York. I'm Israel Chai. Thank you very much. And says Stacy, scary thought. Can Iron Dome run out? Can we run out of Iron Dome missiles? I don't think that we have that problem yet. I don't think there's been any discussion about not having enough Iron Dome rockets at all. But I'll tell you what, though, I'm going to say something. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit interesting around here. Now, Iron Dome, on one hand, is a great thing, and it shoots down missiles. You can see behind me the picture of the missiles on, I guess it's going to be on the right side of the screen. You'll see the missiles coming out of Gaza, and then on the left, the Iron Dome scrambling to catch the bad guys, to catch those missiles. So that's definitely something that is a miracle of defense. But on the other hand, there's another side to the Iron Dome thing. The problem with the Iron Dome is that while you have Iron Dome and it's stopping those rockets from hitting you, then you have the leisure to take it easy and say, well, we know how to handle these rockets, and we don't go out and destroy the Hamas leadership. We don't go out and destroy all of those rocket silos, because we kind of lean back, and we kind of lean back on our defenses. And so that's not such a great aspect of the Iron Dome, because we also need to fight back and not just accept the situation as is. So let me know if it's looking and sounding good. I know I'm having a little bit of technical issues. Something with the internet right now from Israel is a little bit slowed down. There's somebody named Marilyn says hello from North Carolina. Some guy named Muhammad keeps writing something in this language. I don't know what it is. Looks like a mix of Arabic and Yiddish. I don't know what it is. Linda says, wipe Hamas off the face of the earth now. And indeed, that is not what's happening. There is a very tough strike against Hamas and their infrastructure, including the now kind of famous trick that the Israeli army ran on Hamas. Basically, there's a network of tunnels. They call it the Metro. And that Metro is in many, many tunnels. A tunnel system of terror tunnels that was in Gaza. And this was how Hamas was planning to attack Israel. 1 second, Oliveira says, sound is good, but picture is blurred. We're working on it. We're working on it. And Muhammad says, Shame on Israel. Shame on Israel that what? That we're defending ourselves. Shame on Israel that we're making sure not to allow ourselves to be defeated, to be attacked by the jihad. I don't think there's anything shameful about Israel at all. I'm very proud that we are fighting so strongly against jihadism and against this attack against Israel. But you know what? The Gaza thing is the easy one. The Gaza thing is the easy problem to deal with. The bigger problem to deal with is this very tough moment of Israeli Arabs that have turned jihadist or have accepted jihadist ideology and are walking in the land. And in this land, they are walking in the streets of mixed cities, and they are making pogroms. Now, do you know this word pogrom? It's a Russian word, right? It means like violent acts. It means like bullying, thuggishness. But it's come to mean pogrom is specifically against Jews. And that's exactly what was happening right now. It's a pogrom. The only difference is this program is happening in the land of Israel. All right, so there's a lot of people saying strong stuff, like Richard, who says, no more Hamas, please evaporate them from this planet. Stop messing with Israel. And notice, by the way, everybody that's commenting is not saying kill all Arabs. We're talking about Hamas. We're talking about jihadism. We're talking about the people that teach jihadism, foment jihadism, act on jihadism. That's a very important distinction. And here comes Ben, and he says, what are your thoughts about what's happening in Lod? Do you think it's still possible for Jews and Arabs to live peacefully together? I just want to say, Ben, that your question that you're asking now is the question. It's a much bigger question than the question of Gaza, because Gaza, we know what's going on. They're arming themselves. They shoot rockets. And we got to fire back and make sure that doesn't happen. And the big picture of Gaza is that we should have never given away that land to other peoples. We should have never walked away from our ancestral homeland and given it to a land that was going to become jihadist. So to the organization that was going to turn into jihadist so quickly. We know that. I'm having some technical difficulties, and I'm trying to work through them at the same time. So, Ben, you're absolutely right about this question, which is the big question of our time. What do we do? What do we do with the Israeli Arabs? Well, you know what? Let me break it down. There's a lot of stuff going on. First, Gaza, right? We walked out of Gaza, and we also allowed it to become connected to the Sinai. And that way, tons of armament came in through the Sinai, Iranian armament, Syrian armament, rockets. It came in through, even though Sisi tried to block it, still tons of knowledge and armament came through into Gaza. Now there's upwards of 50,000 rockets there. That's number one. Number two is that we are now fighting with this escalation of jihadism in the streets of Israel. And here again, we made a mistake. The mistake was that we did not demand loyalty. You have to demand loyalty from a group of people who potentially were not going to be loyal. Now, you know, to American ears, that sounds like racism and all that, but let's just be real. Arabs of this region are followers of Islam, and Islam has a component to it, a side to it, which is radical and domineering and colonialist and a religion of conquest, and so. Here, for example, says Muhammad. He says Israel. Oh wait, hold on 1 second. He says, shame on Israel, Nazi Israel. Okay, so that's part of the propaganda war of people like Muhammad who are trying to say about Israel that we're the Nazis. But we perfectly well know that the truth is that the Nazi-like ideology, which we saw already in the 1920s, of the combination of Palestinianism and Nazism through the personage of Haj Amin al-Husseini, who got together with the Nazis, later on actually became a full-fledged Nazi and killed about 40,000 Jews in the Bosnian SS. So we know that. And so the war that we're facing right now is a war of failings. We have failed to stop the armament in Gaza because we gave that land away and let Hamas take over. And now we're facing people like myself. We're fighting tooth and nail to make sure that we wouldn't do the disengagement which gave the land of Gaza away to Hamas. Well, we're now sleeping in the bed that we made. And at the same time here in Israel, since we did not demand loyalty of the Israeli Arabs, who are part of the Arab Ummah, the Arab nation and the Islamic nation, and so many of them, not all of them, many of them have succumbed to jihadist ideology, and now we're seeing that in the streets. So Ben says, how would we go about demanding loyalty. You make them swear an oath of loyalty. You say, if we find you or your mosque or your Facebook page engaging in jihad, you lose your residency, you lose your rights, you lose your citizenship, and so does your family. And that's the way things work around here. You make it clear that in this country, and by the way, if you need a model to understand how you demand loyalty, look around all the Arab countries around us. They have that. If you try to be seditious against those regimes, they go out and stop you. They fight against you. Here's another guy. Here's another guy. Gulam Star Wars says Israel is a terrorist. You didn't spell it right, but I understand what you mean. You say we're the terrorists, and I say you're the terrorist. The people who support terror are the actual terrorists. And Phyllis says, get off here, Muhammad, with your hateful words. I want to tell you something, Phyllis. It's good that we see people like Muhammad and what they're saying. I like that what they're saying because they're making it clear who they really are, as opposed to the narrative that says that it's about certain issues like Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood, or maybe the occupation, or the two-state solution, or give me these rights or those rights. You see that in truth, what it's about is the effort to erase Israel from its beginnings, its rebirth in 1948. They want to get rid of it altogether. So don't be upset about the trolls, Marion. Don't be upset, Marilyn. Don't be upset about them. The opposite. Let them show their real self, and that's why I like to put their stuff up on the screen, because I like when they show who they really are. So it's time for us to get strong. And here is Alit, who says, millions and millions of people around the world are supporting Israel. We are praying for you. Israel strong. And I like that hashtag so much better than the hashtags that say things like Israel has a right to defend itself. Do me a favor. Do not say Israel has a right to defend itself. You don't need to say that. By saying that, it just makes you into this like defensive posture. We have a right to defend ourselves. No, we don't only have a right to defend ourselves. We have a right to smash the enemies who come to kill us. As the Talmud tells us, people who come to kill you, you can get up first and kill them. Again, I'm making it clear that I'm not talking about all Arabs. I'm not talking about some kind of racism. I'm talking about ethnic rights, our borders, not to be trampled upon, not to try to undermine the Jewish state from within. Those forces are called jihadists. They believe in supremacy, in supersessionism, in their rights over this whole land and their right to control the Jewish people as a minority, Dehimi, second-class population. Those jihadists, they will be fought. And of course, at the head of that snake is today Hamas, and there are others as well. I just want to go now to my screen share, and let's just for a few minutes talk about some of the tweets that I've been dealing with. And this will help us understand stuff that's going on and what people are saying. Okay, let me make sure that you guys are seeing this right. Let's go through some of these things together. Okay, let's go through some of these together. First thing is this tweet here where basically I took a picture. Look at this beautiful picture of the King David's Heart Bridge. And I took this in the middle of the night, and I wrote something that I think is important to all of us, which is God has brought us back after 2,000 years. We went through a Holocaust on the way. Now we are not about to give up this gift of the land of Israel to the greedy thugs of Hamas. All right? So the point of this tweet is to say we are reborn in our land. We are reborn in our land. We have every right in our land. And who are the Hamas? They're not people who want rights. They're people that want to take away our historic homeland. And they use all kinds of excuses. Here I explained the issue of what I explained before. What is a pogrom? A pogrom is a Russian word meaning to wreak havoc, to demolish violently. Historically, the term refers to the violent attacks by local non-Jewish populations on Jews in the Russian Empire. A pogromщик is the dude doing the violent act. It's important to understand what a pogromщик is and how you deal with pogromщikim. You don't appease pogromщikim. You fight them. You fight them with all of your strength, and you shoot them. You shoot bad guys, jihadists, pogromщikim, because they have come to kill you, and you cannot allow that. Let's watch a short video of Naftali Bennett on RT TV.
The fact that there have been a lot more Palestinian deaths than Israeli, is that making Israel look bad, do you think, in the eyes of the global public?
So you think more Jews should die? How many Jews should die for the world
to feel that this is acceptable. The fact that there have been a lot
All
more
right. So
Palestinian
basically,
deaths.
the point of that is one of the tricks out there. One of the things that people say is that there's no symmetry. Right, and that's a big trick. One of the tricks, and I explained this on the last update. One of the tricks is that they say to you, the war is between Israel and Palestine, but the war isn't between Israel and Palestine. The war is between Israel and huge powers, including Iran, including Turkey, and their puppet regimes that their clients, which are Hamas and Hezbollah and others. So really, the truth of the matter is that Israel faces a huge onslaught, and we have to understand who we're dealing with, and not to be tricked into this idea that we have to symmetrically answer these rockets. We have to asymmetrically answer them. If they shoot one rocket at us, we should shoot back 10. And I wanted to talk to you about an idea that I came up with a few years ago that I think is a very important idea, and that is the idea of what my wife calls the karma machine. The karma machine is a way for us to simply set our return fire rockets on automatic and say, we triangulate, we make sure to aim our rockets right at where you're shooting from. And so if you shoot rockets from Gaza, this thing just shoots back automatically to where you shot from. Now, if you put, God forbid, 100 children around that, God forbid, then that rocket, our return fire rocket will, God forbid, hurt those children. And the point of that is, we didn't actually do it. You did it because we told you this is the karma machine. We have it set on automatic. You fired us. It just fires back. Boom. Okay. Because we will not stand one hair hurt on one child. That's called zero tolerance. So this guy named Gulam Sarwar, after your death, God will be too. I don't know what Gulam, which sounds a little bit like ghoul, is really saying here. I'm not really sure what he's saying. But I think he's making some kind of threat. I'm not sure what it is. But if you want to talk about God, Gulam, if you want to talk about God, then I will talk to you about God. And that God is Allah. That's your way of saying what we call Hashem, which is the God of Israel. And guess what? He has never let you defeat Israel in all these years, in 100 years of conflict. You have lost every battle that you have fought with us. Yes, we have lost a few people on the way, but our country has grown. Our country is successful. And where have your countries become? All of the countries that attack Israel, they all are cursed. They all go backwards. And so Allah tells you in the Quran, and he tells you in real life, don't attack the Jews. I bless the Jews. You bless the Jews, you'll be blessed. You curse the Jews, you fight the Jews, and you'll be cursed. Josh Hasten is a good friend of mine and also a journalist and also spokesman for the communities of Gush Katif, Gush Etzion. He's coming back from the area not far from Gush Katif right now, where Gush Katif used to be, which is on the Gaza border. Josh, can you hear me? Are you receiving me?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Yishai?
Yeah, I hear you pretty good. Maybe a little bit louder would be great.
Okay.
But in any case, you're in your car right now, Josh Hasten. You're coming back right now from the Gaza border. You were around in some communities that are defending against rocket attacks, and you went there to support some of the people there. Tell me what you're seeing. What does it look like over there? Are there rockets everywhere? Are people living normal lives? How are they going to have their Shavuot holiday?
So first of all, you should know on the way down there are barely any cars at all going down towards that area, which is absolutely upsetting. I mean, you could just fly straight down there. There's not a lot of cars on the road, understandably, because the people down there are in their shelters or very near their shelters. So I was in one of the communities about a kilometer, I would say half a kilometer to a kilometer from the border, where our brave IDF soldiers are putting their lives on the line to defend those communities down there, to prevent any type of Hamas infiltration into those communities. Certain areas there are staging areas where soldiers are getting ready to go on patrols on the border themselves. I saw also IDF tanks and literally felt the artillery shells going into Gaza. One of the rooms I was in was literally shaking, every boom, 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 and the pictures on the walls were shaking. So I know on one hand we are delivering a strong blow to the jihadists, to Hamas down there. At the same time, we're getting a lot of rockets in return. I've been in the south many, many times where I've had to run to the shelters, and you have 10, 15 seconds to make it into the shelters. I've experienced that many, many times today. I did not have to experience that, but I did see in the air above me, I saw one rocket which was fired seconds before as I was in my car, which was intercepted by the Iron Dome. I saw the whole thing. It's like out of Star Wars or something, some sort of sci-fi movie, but this is real. And this is what people have been dealing now with for 20 years. I don't know if people out there realize this is not the first round by any means. The first rocket was fired in April of 2001. Initially, they were firing towards Gush Katif. 5,000 rockets landed in Gush Katif. This is before they had the red alert system. And I was down there from 2007, 2009, working in the town of Sderot. This is before they had the Iron Dome. So you knew if there was a code red, you knew that there was nothing out there that was going to, other than God, of course, but there was no practical means or military means to defend you. Today we do have the Iron Dome. That being said, with the amount of rockets fired, unfortunately, it's impossible to intercept every rocket, even though the Iron Dome is doing a great job. It's hitting 9 out of 10, 90%. But because of the barrages we're seeing, that's why, unfortunately, we've had 10 deaths so far. And at the same time, though, I believe that we are delivering a very, very strong blow to Hamas, and we should continue to deliver blow after blow until they stop firing at us. And we'll have to see how this plays out in the next days or even longer. But we should be striving for victory against these jihadists. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. They're using any excuse possible. For 100 years now, the call has been Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. Al-Aqsa is in danger. The Jews are invading the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it all stems from that. Chaj Amin al-Husseini, 100 years ago, used that line. And every time he uses that line, or any of the PA leaders or Hamas leaders over the last 100 years have used that line, it has been a call to war, whether it's in Jerusalem or down in the southern border or anywhere else throughout the country. We saw an attempted car ramming in Judea and Samaria near Hebron. There was a shooting this morning. Thank God no one was hurt there. We have what's going on in Lod. So this is a multi-pronged jihadist operation against the Jews, coming not only from Hamas in Gaza, coming from the Israeli Arabs now, unfortunately, as well, along with those who belong to the Fatah or the PA related to that terror organization in Judea and Samaria. So we're getting it on many, many fronts, but we're strong. We overcame the Pharaoh in Egypt, and we'll do it again here with this modern-day Pharaoh, modern-day Amalek, which is Hamas, and we'll overcome this as well, Yishai.
I appreciate what you're saying, Josh. A few comments on what you're saying. First thing, thank you very much for pulling over on the road there and staying safe, and I appreciate that. First thing is, you said something about the Temple Mount. You said that the call that the Jews are taking over the Temple Mount is always the call to war. But in a sense, since we don't actually acquiesce to that, we don't say, hey, actually, we are here to hold on to our land fully. We are here to build a temple. We are here to undermine this effort to undermine us. We're here to be sovereign. We're here to be sovereign in Jerusalem. Now, Hamas has taken that sort of weakness, the next step now, and they are fully saying we are now the defenders of Jerusalem. We will stop Jews from moving into neighborhoods in Jerusalem. We will stop Jews from going up to Temple Mount. I myself am a Temple Mount goer-upper, and I'm supposed to go up tomorrow on the famous Shavuot holiday. I won't be able to go up because Hamas rockets have made it, and the terrorism all around has made it impossible. The Israeli government has shut it down. So kind of lack of clarity on our part to be truthful about what we really intend. That's definitely point number one that I wanted to make with you and ask you, are we not really trying to be the sovereigns in Jerusalem? And the other thing is that the Hamas rocket aspect is the easy one to deal with. They're shooting at us. We shoot back until we stop it. I get it. But what about the fact that Israeli Arabs, and there's so many stories of lootings, burnings of synagogues, mayhem, shootings, bullets, Israeli Arab police officers, part of the Israeli police, turning in their badges and saying, no, we're joining the other side of the jihad. That is a much tougher story. And I'm seeing that people are having a hard time relating to that one because that one is going to be involved in, it's going to ask us a much deeper and harder question. How are we going to deal with these folks? How are we going to demand and enforce loyalty?
So number one, your first two good questions. The first point is 54 years ago when we said Harabait Be'adenu, the Temple Mount is in our hand. It was only several days later where we literally handed the keys to the Jordanian Waqf to be the overseer of the Temple Mount. So yes, Hamas preys on weakness. The jihad, our enemies, prey on weakness, and they respect strength. And I don't know if you've mentioned this before, but I don't think it's a coincidence, for example, that the last 4 years in Israel, I think historically, since the establishment of the state over 73 years ago, have been the quietest until there was a new man in the White House. And I think they are seizing on that weakness on one hand. And on the other hand, unfortunately, they're seizing on our weakness. You mentioned you can't go to the Temple Mount tomorrow. I heard on the radio this morning, the rabbis, the chief rabbi of Israel, both of them are saying don't even go to the Western Wall, the wall down below on Shavuot, because that could be interpreted again as an excuse for the jihadists to say the Jews are trying to Judaize Jerusalem, or the Jews are trying to storm Al-Aqsa. Those are the lies they spread, which leads to the violence. In terms of the second question, it's extremely, extremely worrisome when you have citizens of the state of Israel, Arab citizens who work alongside Jews, especially in the hospitals and in medical settings, who now are faced with, I guess, an internal dilemma. Do they stay the course, or do they join those, for example, in Lod or in Akko or in Jaffa or in any of these other cities who are looting and rioting and calling for the destruction of the state of Israel? It is extremely, and I agree with you, it's even more worrisome than the Hamas rockets. What's going to be the day after tomorrow? We've passed Ramadan now. We passed the Al-Quds Day. We passed the Nakba Day and all the holidays. And we'll have one more day. We have another Jewish holiday of Shavuot tonight and tomorrow. What is going to be the day after tomorrow? It's extremely worrisome. And we'll have to see what happens in terms of the attitudes. If they can calm down on the other side, or if things have changed forever. And I think only time will tell. It's very hard to say, but I agree. It is much more worrisome. And again, dodging rockets is no fun, Yishai. But when citizens of the state of Israel turning their backs, I'm not saying that they're Zionists, or ever were Zionists, but those who literally on a day-to-day basis are coexisting until now in some way, shape, or form, if they turn their backs on that even minimalistic coexistence, then we really have a long road ahead. This is just the beginning of very, very tough times ahead, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. It's a tough question. There's a great Hebrew word, which I don't know how to say exactly in English, which is birur or birur, right? Like sifting, a kind of clarification.
Right.
And we're gonna go through a process of clarification here coming soon. Maybe one more question for you, Josh. You mentioned, you didn't say him by name, but there was the Trump presidency versus the Biden presidency. With the Trump presidency, there was not only was there a cessation of terrorism, but there was also the Abraham Accords, this feeling of great hope. And I myself, people may kind of not understand that a person like myself, who on the one hand wants to be very strong against the jihad, is also one who very much favors relationship with the Arab countries around us and an opportunity for regional peace, regional growth. And people don't always understand that it's actually two sides of the same coin. You crush the jihad against us, and then you open your arms to the decent Arabs, our cousins in this region, to make it an Abrahamic region, a Semitic region that comes together. Where do you think this, on the international, or at least a regional plane, where do you think this latest conflict, which, by the way, doesn't have a war exactly, it doesn't have a name yet. It's like a war, but it doesn't have exactly a name. There's no, they have Operation Shomrei HaChomot, right? Like defender of the gates, defender of the walls. But I don't think I succumb to that. I wanted to call it Wrath of Allah. Okay, that's what I wanted to call it. But where do you think the Abraham Accords and our relationship with Arab states around us, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Morocco, Bahrain, etc., where do you think they're going to go from here?
Yeah, so it's a difficult question. So, we had so much success, and I apologize, there's literally a Harley Davidson pulling up behind me here, motorcycle. But we had so much hope and prospects for greater relationships with the Gulf nations. Only, country after country after country decided they had enough already. They wanted to normalize ties. You could say it was because they realized that Iran is the greater threat, and they'd rather be on the side of Israel against the Iranians on one hand. On the other hand, you have so much striving for economic peace and cooperation between Israel and the Gulf states. And I wonder if they're also going to be pressured now that we have this internal Israeli-Arab situation. I wonder if they're going to stay the course and continue down this path of economic normalization. By the way, the rockets just a minute or two ago going off down in certain areas in southern Israel. We'll have to see where they decide to, if they want to join, continue to join Israel down this path, or they could also turn their backs. I have no idea what they're going to decide. But in terms of peace, you and I were at an iftar at the beginning of Ramadan, which seems like so long ago. So much has happened.
Right.
And
just want to make that clear. You and I were in Hebron, in Arab Hebron,
yeah.
right? In an Arab Mukhtar's house,
Yeah.
an important Arab leader. We were at his house eating an iftar meal.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, you should know that same Mukhtar, which means like local Arab leader, has sent us messages saying, "Hey, I'm with you, Israel. Fight hard
Yeah.
against the jihad." So he's very much with us.
Those people do exist, and those are true relationships. People might brandish you and me and others as right wingers and whatnot, but I was at that iftar. I saw a real sense of partnership and coexistence, ground
That's right.
up, building of ties, whether they're economic or personal. I saw it for the first hand. So I'm glad to hear that you're getting those messages, because they are part of that Abrahamic
Alliance.
Alliance, exactly, which we can experience. It's good to see that they are not being turned, and I think they're really with us. And I hope that more and more people would understand. I'm not saying they have to be Zionists, but to understand Israel is, I think you said it to me, actually. Israel is here to stay. They recognize that. I think these are perhaps your words. I'm quoting you. Israel's here to stay. We recognize that. And we are not going to succumb to the pressures of the PA and Hamas and these radicals. We want to build a better life for our families. And we realize that the best way to do that is to side with Israel. So hopefully, please God, the Israeli Arabs will wake up and realize, hey, we've had healthcare benefits, we've had education, we have had all these advantages, we've had the best quality of life in the Middle East here, and we could throw it all away really very, very, very quickly if they decide to go that path, or they could take the opposite path and ironically be like this family or clan, if you will, in Hebron, in Arab Hebron, who wants to sit down and have peaceful relations with Israel.
That's right.
The ball's
That's
in
right.
court. We'll have
That's
to see
right.
what happens in the days ahead.
Okay, Josh, before we let you go, just want to read a letter, a little note here from Kurdistan, which is a Kurdistan. I think he probably means autonomous Kurdistan in northern Iraq. And his name is Pejman. I had a friend named, Iranian friend named Pejman, so I know the name. Pejman Piran. He writes, "Shalom, Israel. I'm from Kurdistan and love Israel. Maybe it's not good to be provocative in tense situation. Best to calm down and pray. But in my opinion, to occupying Gaza, it's best difficult option to once and for all put all the jihad and dangers for both sides to stop." I think what he means is you got to defeat Gaza, you got to defeat Hamas, you got to take your land back, and folks like our Kurdish friends know perfectly well. Whoa, I just lost you there.
Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm having some audio difficulty.
Right.
Hold on, just 1 second. We're having a little, we're having a little bit of an audio difficulty here.
All right.
Okay, Josh, we let.
Sorry about that, but wishing you a Chag Sameach. If you can hear me, Chag Shavuot Sameach, and we'll let you go. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the time. Sorry for that technical difficulty, and keep doing what you're doing. Be strong, be safe, and Chag Sameach for all of your listeners and your viewers.
Okay, I lost Josh there, and we're having some technical difficulties. But in any case, I hope you guys can hear me, and I want to really thank Pejman for writing so beautifully from Kurdistan, and I want to thank Josh Hasten, who is the spokesman for the communities of Gush Etzion, and also a journalist for jns.org, for being with me. And I want to go back for a second, if possible, to some of our videos. So let's go back to that and see if we could check out something so important right now. I hope that you're hearing me. I hope that everything's okay. Let's.
And I'm an Israeli Arab from Nazareth.
All right.
And from an
One
Arab
second.
to
Let's.
an Arab, I have a message for you as representative.
Okay, wait. I want to make sure. Please tell me if you're hearing this audio.
I have a message for you as representative. In the last week, while my country has been bombarded with terrorist rockets, she has exclusively condemned Israel and spread false stories to her millions of followers. In her speech, she complained that U.S. officials support Israel's right to self-defense, but
you'd hardly know Palestinians existed at all. There has been no recognition of the attack on Palestinian families being ripped from their homes in East Jerusalem right now. No mention of children being detained or murdered. No recognition of a sustained campaign of harassment and terror.
Really? How about how you have spent a week bashing my country with no mention of the fact a 6-year-old child was murdered by Hamas? No mention of the 1,600 plus rockets, each one a war crime, fired at my family and friends. No mention of the fact that Hamas murdered Israeli Arab Muslims in Lod. No mention of the fact that Palestinians started a violent riot at Al-Aqsa, which is why police were forced to involve in the first place. No mention of the fact that this terrorist organization is targeting 1.9 million Israeli Arabs, or that they have already murdered 17 Palestinians in Gaza with rockets intended to hit Israel. Do those Palestinians' lives not matter, Rashida? But there is more.
How would you feel it if you lived in Gaza, where your power and water might be out for days or weeks at a time?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because this week it was Hamas who knocked out electricity for 250 Palestinians with a rocket, something they've done many times before. Then again, none of this really surprising, since it's all about you. You're hijacking the black struggle in America to make it about yourself. But Arabs in Israel and Palestine have nothing to do with America's history of racism. Rashida, I'm telling you, as an Arab Israeli on the ground, your words contribute to division and violence in my country, where you don't have to live with the consequences. Represent your people. In Michigan, because you're sure as hell, you don't represent us.
Okay, a very powerful video from my good friend Yosef Haddad. Amazing video, and I think he did a great job of really talking to Rashida Tlaib as an Israeli Arab and saying, you're a liar, you don't represent us, the real occupation is that of the jihad. And we have also a commentator here right now whose name is Riyad Dagar. He says, Riyad writes very nicely. He writes, most of your listeners, I find, are naive and not well-read or informed. So please try to educate them and tell them the hard facts. Israel's the occupier and aggressor. And if peace is to prevail, and the occupation and aggression. So before we even go on, we'll read the rest in a second. So he's trying to say that the Jewish people, which this area is called Judea because of the Jewish people that had two commonwealths here, 3,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago. Then there were various Arab conquests who came and went and came and went, but they never had a capital here. They never had a state here. There were individuals who certainly had houses here, but it was always a backwater place. And there was no historic Palestine. There never was a historic Palestine. And yet, this Riyadh wants to tell you that the truth is that the Jewish people are foreigners. And this is one of the main anti-Israel narratives, the occupation. By the way, if you don't know, the occupation, according to the jihad narrative, begins in 1948. That's when the Nakba, the disaster, is. And basically, even in the hundreds of years beforehand, when there was a significant Jewish presence back in the land, we were always under the thumb of Islamic and Arab bullying and thuggery. But according to Riyadh, the real truth is that we Jews are white colonialist interlopers, not Middle Eastern people, not people that have been around this region forever and ever, and of course predate the Arabs in this country. Abraham had two sons, Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac was the continuation of the Jewish people, and Ishmael was the beginnings of the Arab people. And Ishmael was sent to Arabia. He was sent eastward, and he indeed, grew there and succeeded there. But Isaac got the blessings to be in this land and in this place, which we're back in again. God said, even when I exile you, I'm going to bring you back to this land. And here we are. And the international community recognized that in the 20s, that Israel had a historic connection to this land. And here we are, we're back. But continues Riyadh, and he says, life is too short to be spent on occupying other people's land and homes. I agree. Maybe you should take the jihad out of here because it is nothing but a warring faction. What's the word I'm looking for here? A land grabbing, a conquest religion. In any case, he says peace accords you had with some Arab countries are meaningless as the peoples of those nations are against the Zionist occupation and their governments. I see, just like I read to you a second ago from the Kurdish people and many others, that people are tired of your endless jihadism and efforts to destroy Israel, which boomerangs on you and destroys jihadism right back. Look at what's happening with Gaza. Is that a healthy state? Look at all the places. Look at Syria. Look at South Lebanon. Look at Lebanon, where the jihad has taken root. Wherever the jihad takes root, there's no more joy. There's no more decency of life. Look at Turkey before Erdogan and after Erdogan. Look at Iran before the revolution and after the revolution. You guys are taking away the decent life of decent people. Our region would be blessed if it wasn't for the jihad. It would be blessed. We would have relations. We would have trade. We would have opportunity. But your jihadism is a retarded, retardant. It repels progress. It puts us into the 11th century instead of the 21st century. And so you read me these stories about peace that's going to come through us leaving. Of course, you want to not listen to Allah. You want to force your way, which has lost every time. You want to retard your people's progress, which is what the jihad does. And you want to blame it all on other people because you have a victim mentality instead of taking responsibility and actually wanting to fulfill the will of Allah. You're not fulfilling the will of Allah. You're fulfilling the will of yourself, your greedy, jealous self. And that is what the jihad is all about. And that's why every place that the jihad controls is backwards. Okay? Because Allah curses you because you hate Israel and you hate decent people. When you hate Israel, that means you hate decent people. Because you don't want trade, you don't want life, you don't want education, you don't want clean water. You want war and conquest and rape to hold on to things that aren't yours. And that's exactly, everybody could see it. And don't tell me that the Arab nations, all hate Israel. I don't see that at all. I hear from my Arab friends in Arab nations, and you just heard from an Israeli Arab, Yusuf Haddad, saying to you, stop it. We have every right to live in this place. We want a Jewish state of Israel. Arabs are successful minorities inside. And the only way they'll be successful as a minority in Israel or as a majority in this region is through the Abraham Accords, the Abrahamic perspective, and not the jihadist perspective, which is an endless war that brings to nothing but regression. Let's look at some of the other comments here. Says Alexander, good to see you on the show. Oh, good to see Josh on the show. That's right. Our brother Josh is a great guy. And thank you so much for coming to us. We get blessings from South Africa, from Eve. Let's see. Belinda says, we stand for Israel. The people here are kind-hearted and generous. Thank you so much. We get praying for you from Canada. But then we got the other kind of guys like Katak, who says Israel crimes, Israel terrorists, Israel shame, Israel koyak. And no name Israel land. I don't know what that means. But we understand the basic premise of these things. Says Penny, probably should I keep telling the truth. Am Yisrael Chai. It's interesting you say that, Penny, because in my heart I started realizing we have to start telling the truth more clearly, more loudly, and help people stop getting confused. People are just so confused because they hear all the Sheikh Jarrah. Maybe it all started because the Israelis were in Sheikh Jarrah, or maybe because the Israelis provoked on the Temple Mount. I want to explain something to everybody. For the jihad, these so-called provocations are the excuses. They look for these things. They prepare rocket fire for 6 years like they did now. And then when they have it ready, they launch, but then they look for some trigger to pin it on it and to say, look, we've been abused, and that's why we're firing all these rockets at you because of our great shame and how you've treated us. We now respond to you with these rockets. It's all totally fake. It's just excuses. It's just a way to find a trigger that they could pin it on so they could have some kind of moral high ground and then attack. And every accusation that they make about killing children, that's what they do. Okay, that's exactly what they do. It's an interesting thing about anti-Semites. What they say about you is usually what they're doing themselves. Selena says something very true. 4 terrorists in the U.S. Congress trying to destroy Israel and America. They're not terrorists. They are terrorists. They are terror supporters. They are narrative terrorists. They are jihadsbara. That's the word I came up with. Instead of hasbara, they're jihadsbara. But there's no doubt about it that Rashida Tlaib is a pro-jihadist person in the United States, and she wants to use the power of the United States against Israel, and then afterwards, of course, she'll turn it against America as well. She does not love America, okay? If you didn't know that, Rashida Tlaib does not love America. If that's tricky for you, then you're kind of missing the picture. She does not love America. She does not love Israel, and she does not love peace, and she does not love people's progress. She loves war, and that's who supports her, the war makers. Let's see. All right. Well, there's a lot of comments from all over the place, my friends. Let's just see one more time what else we can talk about just for a second on the Twitter feed that I want to show you. Let's see here. And as you can see, there's a lot of notifications. There's a lot of stuff happening right now, but I do want to get to maybe one more feed. One more part of the feed. And in the meantime, I want to say something to you in the meantime before I find one more thing to talk about. And please check out my feed at Yishai Fleisher at Twitter. That's my handle. This was Yosef Haddad. We saw that video. That was very, very good. Right. Okay. This is the last video that I wanted to kind of show you. Let's just look at this for a second. Okay. This is the stuff that Israel faces. Tons and tons of rockets coming at us, and somehow, miraculously, the Iron Dome smashes it out of the sky. Amazing. Look at all those rockets trying to every rocket has a name of a Jewish child on it, and they want to kill you. They want to stop you from being able to live a normal life. But I do want to show you that I wrote the following that I think is very important. I said, Allah protects Israel. Those who fight against Israel fight against the will of Allah. And this is me trying to talk to the heart of the Arab world today. Many of them who understand these things. And here's really one of my final talk about how I try to talk to Arabs. All right. Dear non-jihadist Middle East Muslims, Hamas, Turkey, Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the PLO, these are your enemies. Their useless war against Israel brings nothing but destruction and regression for you. Allah protects Israel and hates bloodthirsty Hamas. Choose wisely. All right, that's my effort to try to talk with the Arabs, but that's not everything, because the other part of it is that we have to talk very much to our own people, to Israel, to Israelis, and we have to very much clarify that it's time to realize that Israel is an ethnic national state. They go, Israel, Yishai, you're an ethno-nationalist. I go, yeah, what of it? What's wrong with ethno-nationalism? You mean ethnic national state like Japan, like Hungary, like Poland, like Iceland? What's wrong with an ethnic national state? It's our small tribal land, and around us are ethnic national states, and so there's nothing wrong with that. I say to that people all the time, what's wrong with that? And in that small ethnic national state, which is a recreation, a renewed commonwealth that existed here before but exists now again with the grace of God, we have within us an Arab minority, and sadly we've allowed some of that Arab minority to become jihadists, and we have to, when I say jihadist, I mean a radicalized Islamic concept. You could say it's not radical Islam, it's just normal Islam, but okay, there are different kinds of Muslims, and let's talk about the violent radical types. That's my name for them. That's jihadist. It's a simple way for me to say I'm not talking about all Arabs. I am indeed talking about those people who accept that. And I'm telling you, I know many people who don't accept that, but there are many people who do. And they are within our country. They come in different forms. They come in Israeli Arab form. They come in Palestinians who live in the so-called Judean Samaria and so-called West Bank. And of course, it comes out of Gaza. And then it comes from its various supporters in places like Turkey and Iran. So you have a lot of various kinds of enemies that Israel faces. But first and foremost is establish clarity. And the clarity is that this is a Jewish state. And the Jewish state is supposed to protect the Jewish people first. That's what it's supposed to do. You know, folks, I want to finish off the show with two messages for you, two messages. First, Randy Khan says, the Hamas is not behaving the way Allah would want. Certainly not. The other thing that I want to say, and Idris Yunus says, yes, more rockets incoming for Zionist child killer. The only Zionist child killer is the Hamas, and jihadism, which wants to kill Zionist children. That's true. And I must tell you again and again, your language is only the language of an effort to murder. And at the end, it has all backfired on you for the last 100 years. And the Gazan Arabs are nothing but suffering Arabs. There's the jihadists, many of them are jihadists, and then there are many people who are the sufferers under the jihadism. And so your language is the language of regression for your whole peoplehood. Your whole civilization, Arab Muslim civilization, suffers from people like Idris Yunus. They suffer from you. They suffer from you being such a victimizer of both Arabs, Jews, and really a person who is into regression instead of progression. So I wanted to finish off with two things, my friends. First thing, my good friend Lou Weiss, who helps produce the show. Lou, we got to work with the volumes, the audio of the show here. Lou says, I keep telling the truth, Chag Sameach. So I want to tell you also, Lou, Chag Sameach to you and to all of Israel and lovers of Israel. Tonight, we're going to be accepting the Torah once again in the holiday of Shavuot, or called Weeks or Pentecost. This is the holiday where we accept Torah once again. Every single year, we accepted a new Torah. Is the knowledge that God gave to us at Mount Sinai and gave us a pathway to go on throughout the generations. And a law for life, and a call and a promise to bring us back to the land of Israel. The Torah exists everywhere, but it works best in the land of Israel. That is the yearning of Abraham. That is the promise to Abraham. And that's where we have, through God's great mercy, come back to. With the help of God, inshallah, Bezat Hashem, I will be in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, the holy city, tonight, to accept the Torah again, as though we're standing at the foot of Mount Sinai. Ke'ish echad belev echad, as one man, with one heart, the nation will stand to receive the Torah. And we pray to God Almighty, Hashem, give us strength against our enemies. Give us strength internally to do truth, to demand loyalty from minorities that live in our land, to be loyal to you, God Almighty, and to be unafraid with your strength, and to have continued strength to rebuild Jerusalem and push back our enemies, just as Ezra and Nehemiah did so long ago. And as did Joshua, so too will we do. And thank you, God, for letting us live in this greatest time in Jewish history. Even with all these wars and the jihad and the gangs, this is the greatest time in Jewish history, and we will take up our land. And that leads me to the second point, which is, if you want to be part of it, if you feel that you're part of it, I want you to be part of it. And I want you to give of yourself. I want you to put up a flag of Israel on your car or in your house and say, I stand with Israel. And I want you to support Israel right now. And the way you support us is by sending some of your blood. And the Hebrew word for money is bloods, because it's hard, sweat and tears, right? It's a toil to make that money. Send it this way that we could buy more stuff that will strengthen us. If it's communications equipment or defense equipment or water equipment to continue to put out fires, or to feed the next crops, water the crops, or to feed the sheep so we can hold on to the land, or we have drones that can look down and make sure that nobody's stealing our land. That would be of tremendous help. So please go to YishaiFleisher.com, hit the support button, and give right now. Give what you can, and I promise to move it towards your hard-earned money, towards relief help and strength help that Israel needs. And that is all part of our effort to have strength and being reborn in this land with the help of God, with the help of Allah. My friend Johan Bilu George says, Am Yisrael Chai, Od Avinu Chai, which means the nation of Israel lives, our Father continues to live. But remember, there's forces out there that are very different. See, on the one hand, Reuven says, thank you Hashem for the Torah. On the other hand, Idrid Yunus says, child killer, hopefully infect by COVID-19 also. All right, that's not exactly a blessing. That's a curse from our enemies. But as the Torah tells us, those who bless you will be blessed. And I'm sending you my blessings. But those who curse you will be cursed. And you understand, on this program, I've shown you many people that are willing to curse us. Let us be a channel for blessings in this world, like Robert, who writes to me, standing with all of you, Chag Sameach, waiting for Messiah, Mashiach, along with you. And we're indeed, Shavuot, this holiday, is also the birthday of King David. King David, he's the first chosen king of Israel. He's actually the second, but he's the first of the Davidic line. David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. I want to send you his blessings, King David's blessings, and may we get into the consciousness of a King David in our time, who's going to lead this land like he defeated the Philistines. So too shall we. I want to bless you guys really with lots of love, lots of blessings from the land of blessings, lots of strength to fight this war. We're all part of this war, and we're all part of the blessings as well. Write me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com. Go to my website, yishaifleisher.com, and support. Let me know how you feel about my show, this Israel at War update. Let me know if it's important to you. It makes a big difference to me when I hear from you. Thank you for all your comments from all over the world. Thank you for Jude, who writes, Am Yisrael Chai, and for Al Lid, who writes, Long live Israel. And for Jay White, who writes, stay strong and destroy the evil. Am Yisrael Chai. I know when I see that there's a lot of you out there who are strong along with me. Thank you so much for being with us. And I guess everybody else said it just right. Am Yisrael Chai. God bless you. Stay in touch, stay tuned, stay connected, stay part of the story, stay tuned in to God's great message that even in time of war, God is a man of war, and he defeats our enemies for us. He always has. And we will see great miracles even through this war. Great things are going to come. So, Chag Sameach, everybody. Happy Shavuot, and see you soon. Thank you again, and Shalom.